Hi everybody, welcome to the show. I'm Luke Hector. This is the Broken Meeple, a board game review channel where I do reviews, top 10s, and give my honest opinion about everything I talk about, even if the repercussions might screw me over now and again. We'll get on with the video in just a second, but first I just need to say a quick word from the sponsor. As a fellow gamer, you'll understand this is unacceptable. The solution? Head down to my new sponsor, Kiender.co.uk. Kiender stocks many of the hot new releases as well as some old hidden gems. Free delivery on orders over £30, further discounts on bulk purchases, and even 5% of your spending refunded back to you as points to be used for further discounts down the line. If you use the referral link in the description below and sign up for a new account, you'll get 5% discount on your first order over £60. So let's make gaps in your collection a thing of the past. Get down to Kiender and start saving today. Thank you for listening and enjoy the rest of the video.
Get on with it.
So today I give thanks to Board and Dice for sponsoring me with a copy of Tiletum for review. Yes, I know it's not Tiletum, I think it's Tiletum, I think is the pronunciation for this. It's supposedly Latin for tile, and it's kind of based on the whole, I think it's called Tielt or whatever, the Belgian town or city. That's kind of the way it goes, but if that's the wrong pronunciation, then, well, who do you blame? Board and Dice. Make games that have easily pronounceable names, for crying out loud, or at least show the phonetic pronunciation on your box cover, I don't know. But Tiletum, I think, is the main way it is pronounced. So this is their new affair, and again, you might think this is this in the T line of games or not? Because I've already reviewed Terracotta Army, and I felt that was kind of different. Well, this one, on the other hand, I kind of feel is more in the T line of games. For starters, it's Beige, which a lot of their stuff is, but also because dice. It actually has dice, and you do lay them out and you grab them, they get your resources and stuff, and it's like, now it feels more like a T game from Board and Dice. Now, I'm not gonna lie, in order to tell you what you're doing in this game, I had to re-look up the rulebook because, theme be damned. I mean, the theme really be damned here, but we'll get onto that later. But this is basically where you are merchants in early Renaissance, traveling across part of Europe, fulfilling contracts, contributing to cathedrals, and finding people, building houses. Yeah, basically every shtick that you see in every Beige Euro ever. So this is certainly not bringing anything new to the theme table here. But what you're essentially doing is you play through 4 rounds. At the end of each round, there is a scoring phase for a fair that takes place based on a scoring condition. It'll have a city where it takes place, but then it will also have a scoring condition as well as some points value for them. But the crux of the game revolves around 2 things. Firstly, the dice. You have an action wheel here, and if I can find it, here you go. Action wheel, not a turn or dial this time, it's just poof, plonk it down. And the idea is that you'll take a certain amount of dice from the bag based on player count, roll them, and you'll assign them to the various actions. I'm not going to bother trying to do it accurately here, so ignore me if the numbers are completely screwy here. But you'll essentially have a bunch of dice as such. And then on your turn, you have a little thing to do with the king track, but we'll get onto that a bit later. Mostly what you're doing is that you are taking the die from this area, and let me bring it just back a little bit more, maybe that's a little bit clearer. And so I can say, right, I'm going to take this dice from this one here, and you gain as many resources of the type based on the color of the dice, but the number of resources you get is based on the number on the die. So this would get me 6 metal, for example, and this could get me 6 gold, 2 food, 4 stone, 2 wool, that kind of thing. But the inverse value of the die is how many action points you get for the action of where you took it from. A merchant action, architect action, the joker action, and so forth. So if I take a 6, I'm getting a lot of resources for that thing, but then I only get 1 action point to do what I want to do. That doesn't sound like very much. So maybe I'll just take the 1 here. Well, then I kind of needed more food than just 1, but then I get 6 action points, juicy action points to do what I want with the action. That's something that I've not seen in a lot of these dice games, because normally it's like you pick it up and you just get the pit value and the color. But having the inverse value be important is a nice little twist on this genre, and you know what? I approve. But once you've got these action points, depending on which action you do, you will do things like move around the map with your architects in order to build, to put down pillars so you can contribute to cathedrals. You'll go around picking up bonus tiles, more on that in a second. You'll build houses, which allows you to actually join in the fairs in the first place, but also unlocks bonuses off your board. You'll gain contracts to fulfill, which is literally just get the resources, cash it in, and there you go. But on top of that, you're also gaining characters for your player board. So your player board has several individual houses. You can get the character tiles, which give you little bonuses, but what you're trying to do is you're trying to fill up the columns with the same character, and essentially what will happen is once you've filled up the house and unlocked the house, you'll be able to gain bonus action points on other actions. So you'll be able to say, well, I filled up my biggest house here with the merchant action character, so now I get +3 action points every time I take the merchant action. And this is very much a game of combos and, combos and more combos. This is definitely one of those games where if you're into making the most jankiest of turns ever, this is definitely one for you. Contributing to the cathedrals is literally just pay stone and take the top cathedral tile off where it is, and you'll score so many points. In terms of gaining bonus tiles, though, that's kind of where this whole Tiletum, the whole tile bit in the name comes from, because everything's a tile. So you've got contracts, which are tiles. You've got the cathedrals, which are tiles. You've got the characters, which are tiles. But most of all, you have the bonus tiles themselves. These are littered everywhere. They're on the action wheel, they're on the king's track, they're on the board. You grab them, and basically you have 3 actions each round, which allow you to use these bonus tiles in various ways to create, as I said, the jankiest of combos. You play through the 4 rounds, you total up all the points, there's a little bit of endgame scoring, and of course, the one that the most is... Of course! So let's get the obvious out of the way. Theme be damned, this is a dry as bone, desert bone, ash desert bone. It is the driest of beige Euros I've come across in a while. The whole theme, I forget we're even in Europe for the most part. I mean, it's, if I didn't see the word Paris on here, I'd probably forget. You are basically just going around using dice, grabbing tiles, creating combos, and whatever. Am I a merchant? Who cares? Is this the Renaissance? Again, who cares? In fact, you'd probably forget it was the Renaissance if you didn't have so many cathedrals running around. It's literally, I just don't think they cared what theme it was. It could have, although to be fair, I'm glad they didn't waste another Inca or Aztec theme on this sort of thing. This one does not care about the theme, so don't even worry about that. But it's also aesthetically not the most pleasing either. I mean, it's a lot of browns and a lot of beige. This is just part of the map that you can see. In fact, let me just clear this off for a minute. So, you can see that this is probably the best looking part of the board is this part here. But then, whoop, hello beige. So this is beige, beige, beige. Now it's clean and it's easy to read and tell what's going on, but yeah, you're not exactly getting a looker with this game. That much is perfectly clear. I wish that maybe it were just a little bit more, pleasing to the eye. And certainly pleasing to the eye is subjective if you're colorblind. Yeah, the dice are the dullest of colors I can think of. On top of that, even with some of us who aren't colorblind, the light and the dark grey are far too similar, and in the bad light or even just generally as a passing glance, you're easily going to mistake which grey is which. That has happened with people who are not colorblind at all and have 20/20 vision. But if you are colorblind, unfortunately I've not had a chance to play this game with anyone who's colorblind, but do these dice view better to you? I mean, does dark grey and light grey work for you if you're seeing everything in pretty much half monochrome? This really doesn't look like a game that if you're colorblind you should go anywhere near. I mean, look at the picture on the screen. If you can tell the difference between all 5 of those dice, then good on you, you can play this game. But otherwise, you might want to stay the hell away because it will just give you a bit of a nightmare. The rest of the components are kind of average fare. I mean, the tiles are, generic looking tiles. They're thin. You at least have a decent wooden board. The dice themselves are generic dice, but at least they're, solid. They feel good. They're good enough quality. The, little pillars and houses you've got, it's nice that they're not tokens, but again, it's nothing really to sing home about. Really, the main thing to really talk about from an aesthetic front is that the graphic design is pretty good. There's very little on the board that's difficult to read. You can tell what's the space for a pillar. You can tell what's the space for a cathedral or a house. The action wheel itself is pretty easy to do, although when you've got a lot of dice on there, it can get a little bit on the crowded side. And everything else is pretty easy to kind of understand and half intuitive. In fact, moving on a segue from that to ease of play, I was actually kind of surprised how easy this one was to teach. The actions themselves are not too complicated, and most of what you're doing in this game revolves around a couple of key concepts. Firstly, your storehouse. Everything you get goes on the storehouse, but it's limited, you can't discard willingly, so you have to keep in mind whether this is getting full or not. All the different houses work in the same way, you're just getting the same picture character into the various columns. The contracts are literally just get the resources and fill them out, that's not particularly tricky. The fairs are fairly easy to understand, and the rulebook does at least give you details on how they work. But, a little more ranting coming. Firstly, I'll give credit, the rulebook's very good, actually. In fact, I dare say this is actually one of the better rulebooks from a main explanation point of view. You know, there's a lot of pictorial examples here, the setup is done in great detail, although, you know, the setup is somewhat long. You've got to set up cathedral tiles, you've got to set up the bonus tiles, you've got to set up the character tiles, you've got to set up the contract tiles, you've got to set up the dice. Setup takes a while in this game, it is a bit of a chore. But, you know, everything's done in a step-by-step fashion with a lot of different pictures that show you how everything works. I was pretty impressed with how the main rules were done. Tasks, i.e. the free actions, was a little bit, like, text-heavy. I mean, there's no pictures on that page apart from one small one. I would have liked to have seen more on there. And then it goes on to the appendix, where it gives you reference guides for the various tiles. That's all well and good, and you need to have an appendix like this. But, where's my reference guide? Did I miss something? Where's my little sheet that I have in front of me to explain how this game works? Yes, it's relatively easy to teach. Yes, it's relatively a really cool rulebook. But that doesn't mean that during the game, if it's your first game, you're not going to be wanting to check this on a regular basis. And I'd rather not have to. I'd like to have a nice card in front of me that tells me what things do. And this is a game where every action is 2 or 3 different things you do with action points. It would not be difficult to have a card that basically just says Architect, 1 action point, move to adjacent city, 1 action point, get a bonus tile, 1 action point, do this, put a pillar down. There you go, you could do that in 3 tiny little lines, and that would take up a small portion of a reference card. Rinse and repeat for the other 5 actions, and you're set to go. Why you're too cheap and lazy to do this, I have no idea. I made enough of a rant of it in Terracotta Army. The same applies here. Stop being cheap. Get reference guides in your games, okay? And this goes to every publisher out there, okay? You know, seriously, make an effort. A little bit of effort. And it gets worse when you look at this rulebook, because I got a facepalm about this a minute. This is really annoying, right? Okay, boring cover. Pretty good rulebook. All of the stuff in there. What is this? What is this? This blank page here.
Dude, you're embarrassing me in front of the wizards.
I'm sorry.
This is prime real estate. You could have put a reference guide there. I mean, I want one for every player. I think that's what every game should do. But the bare minimum, friggin' minimum, you should have something on the back of your book as a reference guide with the action points. So in the game, there is nothing to remind you what the actions do. You have to remember or check the book. Otherwise, you don't know. Yes, they're not the most complicated actions in the world, but when you're trying to do everything in this game, particularly if you have janky turns, seriously, where's my reference guide?
We're sorry.
So, that blemish aside, what's the game like to play? Generally, pretty good for the most part, but there are some issues. Now, the janky combos work good and bad. It's good because you get to make janky combos, and certainly most of your turn is a very tough decision about the dice. I love the fact that there's 2 aspects, well 3 aspects technically, type of resource, number of resource, and the action points you get. It makes each dice decision that you make pretty tough, especially when the dice start dwindling and you have to consider whether to pay gold to manipulate the dice in some way. So that's all well and good. The actions that you do are pretty basic and generic. I mean, you're certainly not going to get immersed in this game from a thematic perspective. You are just basically doing mechanics for mechanics' sake. But, this does have a decent amount of positive reinforcement. And this is a term that I don't know if it's official or not, but I talk about it a lot with the gallerist. It's where that when you do something, you tend to get a little bonus for something, and most of it is from these bonus tiles. They can be crests that you have to put on your board, they could be bonus actions, they could be bonus resources. There's all sorts in here, and it is very rewarding to be able to go, right, start a new round, there's bonus tiles on the action wheel. Right, fine, I'm going to take this die, which then gets me this bonus tile, I'll pop it in my storehouse here, and then on a later turn you go, right, I'll take this, I'll get the gold, I'll do this action, but in between my action points I'm going to spend this tile to get some resources, and you know what, after I've just done this next contract pickup, I'm going to take this helper tile and gain myself 3 action points with the architect's action. So I'll then move him across there, I'll put a pillar down, and this enables me to contribute to a cathedral straight after with my free task action.
Oh no, I've gone cross-eyed.
You can create a lot of janky turns, but this creates a big problem. Downtime. And a little bit of analysis paralysis, because these turns can go on a long time. The worst bonus tile that you can get in here from a downtime perspective is the one that gives you bonus actions, or the ones that activate all your characters in the column again. Because your turn might literally have just been, I'll take a die, get some resources, I'll move there, and put a pillar down. Done. But then somebody else's turn is like 2-3 times longer than that massive load that I just described, and so you're just waiting there for them to finish. It's like, you're quite done yet? Oh, no, you got a bit more to do. Oh, you're going to discard that tile now. Okay, fine. Yep, you've done 3 things there. You're still thinking about it, though. Yeah, I didn't think I was going to need it, but now I'm going to need it. It's like, all right, fine. That happens a lot, and I've played with some people who I notice when they're in last place on the turn, they're kind of really twiddling their thumbs and getting a little agitated that they're going to wait a while before it's their next turn. Some of these janky turns can get a little bit too crazy, especially when those free tasks can be done at any time. In between action point spending even. Normally it's before or after you do an action, and that's the case. But you can do it in between action points. You even have little tokens that you have as trackers to say how many you do. Now it's one thing to say, well, I've only got 3 action points this round, so that's all I need. But if you take a 1 die with a +2 marker next to it, I've now got 8 action points. I better take 8 of these markers. Right, how on earth am I going to spend these? Well, I better think about the order. I better think about whether I'm going to use any of these tiles. I mean, I'm going to get another 3 action points, so let's take those 3 and use those for the other action. So I'll spend 1, I'll do this. I'll spend that one, do that one. And it gets fiddly and janky as all get out.
What happened to then?
We passed it.
When?
Just now. We're at now.
Go back to then.
When somebody has, like, 6 to 12 action points in a turn, and you get 1 or 2. It's the turns are just completely out of whack. Now, one thing to say about the different paths to victory, there isn't really much variety here. And that's a bit of a big problem, because the things that you can do, I mean, you can put pillars down and contribute to the cathedrals. Not worth it at all. I mean, you might be able to get a good 10 points, 12 points here and there, but the effort, it's not worth it. I mean, you can get these 10 to 12 points fine, but then if you go through your contract thing, there's a contract here that gets you 3 points for an easy contract. Okay, cool. There's a 17-point contract here for 9 iron. Get a couple of iron dice or find some other way to trade at the contract action. It's not that difficult to get 9 iron. 17 points is a lot for a single tile. And that's not including the 1, 2, 4, 7, 12 points that you get separately on the contract row in itself. Contracts are pretty lucrative, as are the fairs. But, the whole thing of getting cathedrals just seems a little tacked on, although not the most tacked on thing in this game. We'll get to that. So, and the other thing is that you don't really feel differentiated from other players. In some games, I love the fact that if I'm doing this strategy, I feel very different to this other person. Doesn't happen with this. You're going to do a bit of everything. Yeah, you might max out the contract track. Others may not. But you're still probably going to get half of them done. You're just, 2 or 3 short than the other person? I decided my strategy is to fill up every single one of these houses for the bonus points. Yeah, but then other people are going to get most of their houses done and probably fill up half of their stuff with crests, if not more. They might just be slightly behind me. But even if I focused on one thing a lot, eventually I'm going to run out of it and I'm just going to end up doing a bit of the other stuff anyway. It's just a case of when I decide to do that and whether there's anything left. You have 6 actions in the game. It's really 4, because one of them is a joker action which just lets you do one of the other 5 actions. So why is there still only 4? Because one of them is the most tacked on element that you can get in any game, a track. A king track. It's not a church track, it's a king track. Woohoo!
Whippy!
But the king track is literally, and I kid you not, a track for turn order and a few victory points around. That's literally it. So I can have that massive janky turn I mentioned with all these bonus tiles and everything keying off and going mad and exploding and giving me cross-eyed. But the king track is literally, I'll take this die. Gives me 3 action points. 1, 2, 3, done. That's it. Was that exciting? No, it wasn't. That's It's such a tacked on element, because you lose points if you're back on this track, you gain a few if you're ahead, but there are these corruption tokens which I don't have out at the moment, but they're basically, you know, some coin tokens that every player round of turns, you flip another one over and all the markers move back. So, and you reset back to the start point if you're on the negatives, but you stay where you are if you're in the blue section. So you think, okay, well, turn order's important, isn't it? Yes, but the problem is, because the king track is so boring, and because the other actions get you more, most of the time what happens is somebody gets an early start on the king track, and then stays that way for the rest of the game, because nobody can be bothered to put in the effort to catch them up, because you only get 3 actions a turn, you're getting 3 dice over 4 fairs. So 3, 6, 9, 12. You're only getting 12 actions, it's just the fact that you get to do a lot of stuff on those actions. Are you really going to waste loads of those 12 actions just to move up the king track a few times? Probably not. You'll do it by like bonus tiles, or you might just have a throwaway die moment, but most of the time, you know, somebody gets ahead and the rest just don't care. They'll just vibe a second, third and fourth. The point differential is not particularly high, bearing in mind you will easily lap the board once if not twice to get 200 and something points. Who cares if you get 3 or 4 or lose -2 on this every once in a while? It's just not worth it. And because these corruption tokens come out and most of the time they're a negative, trying to get to the max of this track for 15, 12 or 9 points just isn't gonna happen. Because you'll get there and then the corruption token will just send you back. So you've got to time it for the last round, and even so, was it really worth that much effort or even that entertaining? No. So, you know, this track could have been a lot shorter, it could have been much more tight, but essentially you just go for turn order and you get a tile at the end of it. That's it. It's not that impressive for points, it's not that fun to do, it just feels arbitrary. It's like the designers basically found 4 really cool actions to do, decided, oh yeah, we need a joker in there, but there's 5, and then wrote themselves into a corner and couldn't think of something good to do with the 6th action. The king track is a waste of space. It's just a stupid way of trying to make a Euro game more Euro-y and putting in mechanics and tracks, because apparently beige Euro players love nothing more than tracks everywhere in their games. Here's a revolutionary thing. How about just make the person who's last at the moment go first? Would that be so hard to do? It's a self-balancing mechanism. If you're doing slightly badly, you can go first, which gives you a decent leg up, because trust me, going first is pretty important in this game when you're trying to pick the best dice. So why not just punish the person who's slightly ahead, forcing them to consider that if they jump ahead too far, they're going to have to suffer with turn order. You've solved the problem. I don't need that pointless 5th action. This whole bit of the board is gone. And I just designed that for you in, what, like a couple of minutes.
Did I miss something?
Tiletum has been one of those games which has impressed me from certain aspects, but the biggest issue I'm noticing is that after I play more games, it's getting very samey. Nothing really much changes from game to game. Yes, you might have some different scoring conditions, but the characters are pretty much all over the place. You know, the bonus tiles are all around. You still have the king track, you still have the same player board, there's no asymmetric boards or anything like that. The main thing that changes the cathedrals is that one of them you can't build on, whoop-de-doo, and the costs change between them, not a big deal really. So the main thing that varies is the fairs, and you could decide, well, you know what, I'm going to put the wheel in a different orientation to start with, and I didn't mention before, it basically moves one every round, you know, changing up some of the values, but you're not really going to notice a great deal with that each time, and it's not enough to suddenly make me go, oh, this game felt really, really different as a result. But it does have a lot of good stuff about it. The graphic design is easy to read. The rulebook, for the most part, is pretty good, if not excellent, I would say. But skimping out on the reference aids, particularly for a game with multiple action point actions, is unforgivable. But the choosing of the die and that decision making is really cool. And the creation of the combos is really cool. But the games are just feeling really samey. You know, once I've played it a few times, I'm like, yeah, I'm kind of good for a while, because if I play it again, it's like, well, it's the same sort of thing, really. How do I change it up? I can't, really. You do a bit of everything every game, and you're choosing the same actions every time, of which one of them is boring and tacked on as old get out, or I'm literally picking from 4 actions, and that's kind of it. We'll get onto the solo mode in a different video, but from a multiplayer perspective, this is definitely one to play with as few players as possible. But it kind of still meets a 6 out of 10 for me. 6 out of 10, it's above average, it's still fine, but those problems that I've described are big problems. They get in the way, and I feel that you're going to play this game a few times, go, that's good, it's cool, I'll play it, but then you'll be done for a while. You won't see anything new on subsequent plays, so you'll be like, you know, I'll take a break. And then eventually someone will bring it back and you'll play it again and go, that was fine, that was cool, but I'm done for it again. And that's not a game you want. You want to get the most value out of a game, and I don't think this one has enough replay value going for it. Not to mention, it's too crazy long, with too many players, with a lot of downtime, because you kind of have a little bit too much freedom in this game, and there sometimes need to be a few boundaries. But that's my thoughts on Tiletum. What are your thoughts? Do you think this game's amazing? Do you think it's your game of the year? Do you feel that this is a worthy successor to the TV series, or do you agree with me and think that maybe this is just another Beige Euro and nothing particularly new? But I'd be interested to hear your thoughts. Get them down in the comments below and let me know your thoughts. So that's it for me. I'll see you on the next Broken Meeple video. Remember, if you like what you see, you can thumb it up. You can consider subscribing to the Patreon to give me a hand with review copies and just support the channel. But most of all, as I said, get the comments down below. Until next time, you can check out more content on the show, including my top 100 and some other reviews I've been doing for some big pre-Essen releases, or maybe the Terracotta Army review that I did fairly recently, another board and dice title. But until next time, take care, and remember, as always, regardless of how beige you can possibly make it, it's still only a game. Bye for now.